Hi everyone, Paula Harvey of Tejon Ranch Conservancy. Welcome to Lesson 6, Part 2. Today we are going to create our second field guide, and this time we are going to focus on the NGSS Cross-Cutting Concept of cause and effect. Let's get started. So here we go. In lesson 2, part 2 that is, we're going to do a field guide or a collection on cause and effect. So the title of this particular nature journal page will be either collection or field guide. Make it the same as whatever you chose to do for the last one. The last one was patterns. This one we're focusing on cause and effect. Let's talk briefly about what cause and effect is. You probably have plenty of idea of what this looks like. Everything you see in nature has a cause and an effect. So something looks a certain way, there was a cause for that. So we can think of nature as full of mysteries or effects, and we try to explain what might have caused those things. And those relationships can be used to predict future events. In scientific practice, deducing the cause of an event is difficult. And so sometimes there are multiple hypotheses that can coexist with one another. Take, for example, the extinction of the dinosaurs. There are a bunch of different hypotheses for what happened to them. A meteor struck the earth and caused all this debris to get into the atmosphere, which caused it to get cold, and then the animals died of starvation. Or a meteor struck the earth and immediately caused this huge heated environment that killed everything within 15 minutes. Or there was a bunch of small mammals that were developing, and they started eating all of the dinosaur eggs, and so there were no offsprings to replace the ones that existed, and so eventually they died out. Lots of different hypotheses. There are more than the ones I just mentioned. So when we're doing a study, as we are today in cause and effect, you're going to want to answer some of your your I wonder questions with could it be hypotheses. And the more could it be hypotheses that you put under each I wonder, the more you're thinking like a researcher, like a scientist. Let's move on. You need to get your head into these cause and effect psyche that you can use as you're wandering around your environment to decide what it is you're going to study to show cause and effect. So some of the questions you might be asking, some questions you probably already ask and don't even realize you're asking cause and effect questions. What happened here? What caused it to happen? How might you explain what happened? What are some of the possible explanations? Why is it like that? What would happen if? And how does this affect other things? That last question, how does it affect other things? That's going to be one of your reflection questions at the end of this lesson. So keep that one in mind. Here are some examples of cause and effect, because once you start wandering around and looking at everything, you're going to have to try and focus on one particular thing. Things that are impacted or shaped by water, signs of fall, things affected by the wind, or what things that snow does, so the shape of icicles, evidence of drought, things that are broken, things that have different textures that are soft or round or rough, things with strong odor, things attracted to porch lights at night, and signs of the season. There's tons more, but here's a list that you can start thinking about as you try and decide what you're going to study today. It's your turn to start your field guide. Here's what you're going to do. You're making a field guide of cause and effect. You're including 3 to 5 things in that field guide that shows cause and effect. Arrange your page that shows the drawing with numbers and words, and record your observations with words, ABC, numbers, 1, 2, 3, and a picture. Pay attention to the similarities and differences in what you're studying. That too is going to be a reflection question. And evidence of cause and effect, another thing that will be a reflection question. Remember to begin with your metadata. Your metadata is that heading, the day, the date, the time, your location, which includes the habitat, and the weather at the time of your study, the temperature, the wind, the percent of cloud cover. Add more interesting things to your metadata, and you'll find that those headings are going to be more fun to look back on. Who were you with? What did the air smell like? You know, if it was springtime and you're in a field of wildflowers, it's going to smell different. Or maybe you're in that field of wildflowers and you're listening and you're hearing the buzz of pollinators. Those kinds of things are fun to add to that metadata. Plan your page. Start with your heading and then the title. If you're studying 3 objects, create enough space for all 3 things. Consider using 2 pages. If you're studying more than that, maybe you want to study 1 thing for each of your pages. And so plan ahead so that you have a whole page for each of the items you are studying. Remember, with each journal thing that you're studying, you're including your ABCs, your 1, 2, 3s, and a picture. And then save space at the end for that reflection, answering your questions and turning it into a paragraph. One additional thing for your journal entry today that's important, and it's something I want you to add to your journal every time from now on in, and that is to put in a couple of hypotheses for each of your I wonder questions. Start with a sentence frame, could it be? And then answer it. Whatever ideas come to mind. Doesn't have to be the right answer. You just have to show you're curious and have some hypothesis about what might have caused something. So you're going to plan your layout the way that you want it. Here's mine. I studied 3 things. I used 2 pages. I used the facing pages. There's lots of measurements in each of my entries, and each of my subjects is treated the same way. The name of the plant, the measurements, I notice, I wonder, this reminds me of, and could it be for each of my I wonders. Here's a bit of a close-up of my journal page. So you'll notice, starting on the upper right-hand side, there's my metadata. I have my title, which I boxed in with the color of apples. It's called a field guide, cause and effect. And then I identify the cause that all 3 of these things are supposed to be showing. The cause is the end of the summer season. It's right at the beginning of fall. So I'm going to look back at what everything looks like because all these things live through summer. It's the end of summer. What's the effect? Apples ripening on the apple trees. The effect? Yellow blooms on the rabbit bush. The effect? Seed pods are ready to burst on my narrow leaf milkweed. So I'm identifying for each of my subjects what the effect is of the cause that is part of my title. I have 3 things. I've highlighted them in yellow. I've identified all 3 things. And then because I like to write more than I like to do anything else, there's lots of writing. Now, the red arrows, as you already figured out, are pointing to all of my could it be's. Notice just for the apple, there's 5 could it be's for 2 of my I wonder questions. For the rabbit bush, I've got 3 could it be's, and I've got 1 on the right-hand side and 2 on the left side. And then for the narrow leaf milkweed, I've got 1, 2 could it be. Mostly I was running out of room, so that's why there's only 1. I actually, in my head, had a bunch more could it be's. So notice, just on the first page, the metadata at the top, the title, and I even give the cause a name, end of the summer season. And then I mention the effect of the cause and then began my journal study. You want to include all of that. It's going to make your reflection easier. It's also going to make your study give you that focus into cause and effect. I wrote so much about the apple plant that when I began the rabbit brush study underneath it, I knew that I was 2/3 through that page and I didn't have a lot of room. So what I thought was, okay, I'm just going to make it smaller. I'll write a little less. I'll make the picture smaller, but I can't help myself. I like to write. So I wrote more things, completely ran out of room. So I moved over to the opposite page, and at the same level, that lower 2/3, that lower third, I continued to draw the picture of the rabbit brush. Notice though, I also took a circle right down here and I made a magnification. Remember, that was one of our previous lessons, to magnify something. And then I identified a few things, making this a diagram showing that this plant has alternate leaves, that the flower buds are 1 centimeter in length. I identified this as flowers. So don't forget to add something like that to your journal entry. It's interesting. Then after I finished with my rabbit brush, I went up and studied my last thing, which was narrow-leaf milkweed. So I started on my right, upper right-hand corner. I went down, over to the left, and then up. I actually did my journal in a circular, clockwise motion, which actually felt really good and complete. Anything done in circles always feels kind of complete. And I liked how it turned out. So it's your turn. You're going to take about 45 minutes to an hour to study all of your items, 3 to 5 things. Spend about 15 minutes for each of those things. Don't spend a lot of time on any one. But then when you're done, come back and do your reflection questions. So have a good time out there, and we'll see you in an hour. Hi, we're back. Now it's time to do the reflection. Quick reminder of what you're going to do. You're going to answer everything in question-answer form. Question-answer form means you put as many of the words from the question into your answer. This doesn't make it harder. This makes it easier. Answer all your questions and then number the questions in the order in which it makes sense to put them if you were to put them all in a paragraph, which you are about to do. Start with a topic sentence. I've given you an example here. You're welcome to use it. It's a topic sentence is just a general kind of an introduction of here's what you're about to read about. I created a field guide focusing on cause and effect. Write your answers into the order in which you wanted them into that paragraph, and then end with a closing sentence that just wraps everything up. And here's my example. It was interesting to hypothesize about the causes and effects of my subjects. All right, so here are your questions. What are some features that all of the things you studied share? So what I'm really asking is, what do they all have in common? I might have written an answer something like, some of the features that all of the things I studied share are plants that are producing seeds of some sort. That might be it, because an apple is a way of developing seeds for its tree. The flowers on rabbit brush is a way to reproduce seeds. And the seed pods, obviously, on the narrowleaf milkweed are the seeds. So that's how I might answer that. Some of the features that all of the things I studied share include seeds and leaves. Could be something like that. Notice though that I'm saying it in question-answer form. The second question, how might you describe this category of things in general? Do you remember what I wrote about on in my journal? What's the category? The end of the summer season. So that's why I encouraged you to go ahead and write what that category is, because that makes it so easy to answer this question. All right, the next one. What are some of the differences between the subjects in your field guide? Not what they have in common, but what makes them different. If you look at my field guide, they're all plants. That's what they have in common. That's what I answered in that first question. What makes them different? One is a tree that is many, many years old. One of them is a perennial bush shrub that grows all year round, or at least leaves out all year round. And one of them is also a perennial, meaning that it grows all the time. It doesn't just grow once and then dies off. That's called an annual. But it goes dormant in the winter, and then it grows new branches in the spring. Very different plants. They're all plants. That's what they have in common, but they have very different life cycles. The next question, what are some possible explanations for why these features occur? Here are your could it be statements. And you need to answer at least 2 hypotheses, 2 could it be's for each of your I wonders. The more that you include, the more you're thinking like a scientist. Now, if you made a field guide that evidences an effect, like I did, the change of season, what can you say about how that effect is impacting this place? For example, if you did it on evidence of drought, how is that drought affecting the habitat? For me, I'm doing the change of season. So what is the evidence of that change of season? How is it impacting the habitat that I'm living in? You know, the sky has changed colors, the temperatures are changing. The plants that lose their leaves, those leaves are getting stiff and brittle, and they're getting a little darker in color. They're getting ready to go into dormancy. Those would be the kinds of things I would be addressing here for my journal entry. So consider that for the things that you studied. So we're done with this. After you finish writing this, don't forget to put this title into your table of contents. The next time, we're going to be doing a 3rd field guide. This one is going to be focused on systems and system models. What are systems? Systems are things that work together, multiple things. Look at a tree. There's roots, there's the trunk, there's branches, there's leaves, there's fruit. Those are all different parts of a system. So start looking around and see things that are systems, and consider that as part of what your next interesting field guide is going to look like. I'm looking forward to this one. Bye for now. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you're enjoying this series as much as I am.